and thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Traits to Seek in a Modern Commercial Operations Platform. We have a great audience today. We really appreciate you being here. Today, we're discussing the changes commercial leaders need to make in order to meet new requirements that come with shifting life science roles and evolving local healthcare markets, as well as the topic of attributes to seek in a sales performance management system to respond to these change vectors. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on demand for viewing at a later date. And we would love today's presentation to be interactive. So you may ask your questions at any time just by typing in the Q&A box that you see on screen, and we'll cover those questions during the Q&A portion of today's presentation. And at the end of the webinar, you'll be prompted to fill out a quick feedback survey, and we thank you in advance for taking the time to share your valuable feedback with us. So I'd like to kick things off and introduce our presenters for today's session, starting with Tom Richey. Tom currently heads ZS's innovation team to redefine the sales performance management capabilities needed to help organizations deploy successfully in the ever-changing healthcare landscape. And Abhi Triyunate, Abhi leads the software product and technology group at ZS. He oversees the global product and services teams to deliver multiple product lines from prototype all the way to production. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll pass it over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Emma. And hi, everyone. So today we're going to be discussing the key traits to seek in a modern sales performance management platform. And we're going to do this in three parts. First, I'm going to walk you through some important changes that we see in the healthcare landscape and in the commercial model that we feel are relevant to this topic. Then Abhi is going to walk us through some technology enablers that we feel are going to be critical in the future and that you may want to be aware of and your organization may want to leverage. And then finally, we'll get to the key traits. We'll give you a checklist of what to seek in a modern sales performance management platform to help you in the future with your choices. So as you can see, busy agenda. So let's get to it. And first, let me give you a little bit of background of why we feel that this topic is particularly timely, particularly relevant. And in order to do this, let me take you back a few months. So back in late March 2020, in just a matter of a few days, life science companies lost 95% of their face-to-face interactions with healthcare providers. 95%. This was huge. This, we believe, was really a watershed moment, really a moment where people across the industry felt that it was time for a change. It was time to evolve their commercial models to go about it differently. We talked to a lot of leaders at the time and since then, and during these discussions, four key points, four key vectors of change emerged as important to the industry. The first vector of change was that leaders believed that go-to-market models needed to be more local, more customized. Of course, the pandemic had impacted geographies at different times and with different impact. But I think it went beyond this. Leaders felt that there are some fundamental differences between markets. There are some fundamental differences between New York, Manhattan, if you will, and Iowa or Houston, in that it was really important for organizations to design specific strategies for these micro markets. The second vector of change that leaders agreed on was that more B2B was needed. In our conversations, we found agreement that organized providers, networks, payers are having an increased importance in markets. They're having an increased power, and that organizations wanted to step up their B2B game to be able to design some strategies faced in interacting more effectively with these customers. The third vector of change was that there was an acknowledgement that service-oriented roles are becoming more and more important, and it's important to prioritize them. By service-oriented roles, I mean things like scientists, finance specialists, nurse educators, patient specialists, account executives, beyond the traditional field representatives. There was agreement that it's really important to incorporate them and to plan in a holistic manner, accounting for these roles. And then finally, final vector of change was about digital, more digital. It was about this 95%. There was agreement, of course, that restricted face-to-face requires more emphasis on digital promotion. So as you can see, strong agreement that change is needed, strong agreement on the type of change that was needed, but also there was agreement that enacting this change was going to be very difficult. And we asked these leaders, we asked them, why is it going to be different? What are going to be the key barriers of change? And you won't be surprised to hear that one of the key obstacles that came at the top of the list was technology and systems. And so this is why we're here. This is why we wanted to focus on sales performance management platform. It is very important to address this key obstacle to allow your organization to truly make the changes that are needed to succeed in the future. So now let's get into some of these future technology enablers that are important for you to be aware of. Abhi, do you want to take over?
Sure, thank you, Tom. And welcome again to everyone. So now let's look at some of the technology trends and capabilities that will enable us to meet these changing business needs that Tom just shared. Starting with the graph analytics, and one of my favorites as well. Now, when we say graph analytics, we are essentially leveraging the relationship and connections between these complex set of nodes or entities, and leveraging concepts of graph database to graph-based querying and modeling to graph visualization, all of these coming together so we can successfully use node-based optimization techniques to support these modern complex hierarchy and these multi-role and multi-channel networks within the commercial ecosystem of today. The next important trend, which I'm sure we all can relate to, given the COVID pandemic, is that of remote communication technologies. Now, from emails to social media to web conferences to, of course, the limited physical interactions, we need seamless interactive technologies to support the rise of what we are calling as the phygital rep in an omni-channel world. This world of physical and the world of digital converging together, giving this rise to the phygital rep. The next important one is that of AI/ML. Through a combination of decision support techniques, from the basic rule engine to the advanced AI/ML leveraging genetic algorithms, the goal is to provide contextual and actionable insight to our users to enable intelligent and insight-driven actions. Now, when people are taking actions, you want to make sure that if the systems are built for the human beings, which is exactly our next enabler, which is how do you leverage the modern UX and UI and concepts of ethnographic, behavioral, and observational research combined with these concepts of modern JavaScript frameworks, concepts like embedded BI, concepts like advanced visualization techniques across devices and form factors to help enable humanized and personalized experiences across the value chain. Now, to meet the growing needs of our global customers and the increased complexity of the healthcare environment of today, we need to efficiently leverage the power of cloud and big data. And this is why the tech stack and infrastructure selection becomes absolutely critical. Now, another dimension worth highlighting is that of a temporal database. Now, when we say temporal database, at a high level, the goal is to have the database store all your data, but also have the knowledge of the time dimension, so that when you make the changes, the system knows when those changes should become active versus waiting for you to come and take actions for them to become active. So essentially, you're making your changes today, and the changes will actually become applicable at a certain point in time, leveraging the concepts of temporal database. And all of this together as a whole will allow this concept of always on and scalable platform supporting agile planning and execution. And last, not the least, in this Uberized everything as a service world, the need of the hour is to have a loosely coupled architecture that allows for clients and potentially other vendors as well to bring in their best on top of the sales performance management platform to enable success for our clients and for their customers as well. Now, using concepts like a common foundation, microservices, API-based interconnections, data assets, pluggable modules, the next generation sales performance platform has to be capable of evolving and adopting the technology innovations as they come along. Now, these were some of the technology enablers that we wanted to highlight. And to take us further, let me call upon Tom, and we'll quickly go over our poll as well. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Sabi. And thank you for this list. I think this is a very strong list. And these technology enablers really present exciting possibilities. So as you mentioned, one of the things that we wanted to do, we'll get to the checklist, but one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to do a quick poll to get your sense on which one of these themes are more important for you. So it should appear on your screen. If you don't mind, please select what we want to know is what is your main challenge in your organization in commercial planning and execution today? Please pick the ones that are most important to you. And we'll leave it just a few more seconds. Okay. Lack of connectivity between HQ and the field and manual time-consuming processes. I'll leave it for another 5 to 10 seconds. It seems like manual time-consuming processes is taking the lead. All right, great. Thank you for this. I think we can get through the checklist, but digital readiness support virtual and AI capabilities as well. Great. Thank you for this. Let's get to the checklist now. But this is very interesting. And I think you'll see in some of the key traits to look for, we'll cover some of these pain points. So what are some of the key traits to look for? Oh, sorry. Let me make sure that this works. Here we go. So here's our checklist. And let me get started on our checklist with the first key trait to look for in a sales performance management platform. And it's the future-proof. We want the platform to be able to support your needs of today, but also your needs of tomorrow. And here, this is really about these 4 key vectors of change that we've talked a little bit earlier into the introduction. First, you want your platform to enable more local planning. And what does this mean? You want the platform to be structured to support new concepts like local health markets. You want the platform to support concepts like local teams, local leaders, local GMs, new reporting hierarchies. You also want the platform to be able to model the dynamics and the realities within each one of these health markets. And also you want it to be agile, to enable local changes in an agile manner that is easy and not disruptive to other areas that are not impacted with these changes. A second way, our second vector of change, if you remember, was B2B, better support B2B. And in this, you want the platform to be able to model entities like organized providers, integrated delivery networks, and the influences, the relationships of power that exists between all these different entities so that you better understand the organized providers that you're dealing with and you're able to implement smarter B2B strategies. The third vector of change, if you remember, was a more diverse set of roles, things like account executives, nurse educators, patient specialists. You want them to be an integral part of the planning, and you want the planning to be holistic, to consider your traditional reps, but also these service-oriented roles. And then finally, we want the platform to leverage some of the technologies that Abby mentioned in the previous slide to better support virtual interactions between your organization and your key stakeholders. So future readiness really is important as it allows your organization to adapt to shifting market needs and evolving selling models.
Now, all of us have lived through the challenges of isolated and disintegrated system for far too long. Now, in this era of hyper-connected world, you want to ensure that the platform is capable of connections both up and down the value chain. From rosters and alignment data to marketing and orchestration system into the CRM system and in an iterative way coming back so that the system is completely interconnected and hyper-connected with all the systems across the value chain. So a hyper-connected platform will enable integrations across systems and technologies, ensuring accuracy and the defragmentation.
A third trait that you want to look for in the platform is for it to be mobile and dynamic. And this one's an interesting concept as well. I think this is about changing the planning process from a discipline that is typically static and often stale. You conduct it 4 times a year, and by the time you're finished, the plan is already outdated. So from a discipline that is static to a discipline that is more organic and provides more current and useful information to the field. And there's different ways to do that. First of all, you want to make sure that your platform is able to capture more and more data and more frequent data, more and more recent data, and to turn this data into insights and guidance that provide more frequent, more relevant guidance to the field to enable them to go to market in a more efficient way. And then second of all, once you have this guidance, you also want the platform to deliver this guidance when and where the field needs it. So what we recommend here is to have a mobile app that your reps can access through mobile technologies like their iPhone, their iPad, iWatches as well, to enable a more dynamic consumption right when they're at the point of execution. So again, making this platform mobile and dynamic results in a more dynamic experience for the field and really will end up maximizing execution.
Too often, practitioners have a feeling that they're not in control. We often hear from our clients and customers this feeling of a black box when it comes to most sales performance management system. So it's extremely important to have the power for your users to be able to make changes when you need them and how you need them. And that's where self-service becomes a key trait. Now, for self-service to be successful, the system, of course, needs to be intuitive, of course, needs to be functional, and has to be UX and UI rich. Let's take a simple example. Your end users, whether it's field or HQ, they want some basic changes to the reports that have been exposed. Now, you don't want them to come to you or to your partners to personalize these changes for every individual or for every single of them. Wouldn't it be nice if for most basic changes, users can do it themselves? Of course, yes. And there are many, many examples, both at the field level and at the HQ level, all the way from simple activities going all the way up to administrative activities, where you want the power in the hands of your users versus having to depend and wait for somebody else to make those actions for you. So self-serviceability will empower your stakeholders and end users in the organization with the power to drive better decisions and timely actions in a self-service way.
You also want your platform to be personalized and motivating. And this trait is really about your incentive compensation program. Your incentive compensation program is a very powerful instrument to drive your strategy and your execution. And there are ways to really make this incentive compensation program more impactful by making the reporting consumption a more a more exciting, a richer experience for the field. You can do this in a number of ways. For example, you can make sure that you provide personalized IC-related insights to the field to point out things that they could do that could impact not only the organization's results, but also their personal compensation. So by peppering the field with some of these type of insights, you can make that experience richer and more dynamic. You can also make it more interactive by building things like what ifs, like calculators that allow the field to make projections of their own, to play with what they could do and see what impact this could have. Again, both on the organization and on their own personal returns. So again, this trait enhances motivation and also maximizes your incentive program as an instrument to drive strategy.
Now, new technologies give us the opportunity to make planning more organic, more agile, and something that evolves at the same rhythm as the broader marketplace. Using concepts like always on and temporal models, something that I touched upon earlier, we want the system to be real time. So any changes to the system, let's say territory changes, leads to automated adjustments so organizations can efficiently shift alignment and call plans and perhaps incentives as well in a real-time basis. So this idea of always on and fully automated platform allows organizations to be more agile and have a plan that is always current, no longer waiting for the next semester planning, no longer waiting for the next data feed. The system is always live, the system is always current, and system also knows with this concept of temporal concepts when those changes would become applicable.
In addition to being real-time and always on, you want your platform also to be AI-driven. And we believe that sales performance management is a really good application ground for AI. The reason for that is that sales performance management is a process that is filled with frictions, inefficiencies, pain points along the value chain. And with AI that is applied smartly to all of these pain points, there's a way to reduce these pain points and make the process more efficient and more valuable. Let me give you a couple of examples of application like this. First of all, data management. Many of you know how painful this data management can be. And when there are some data errors inside your process, this is time consuming and very costly. You can apply AI to scan your data, detect any changes in trends for early anomaly detection, and make sure that you don't have errors that can carry throughout the process. This is very important, for example, in incentive compensation. A lot of you know how costly restatements can be. Doing early data and anomaly detection with AI can really help resolve this. Another example is you can apply your algorithm to look for performance changes. So you can take a look at your strategic targets and detect conditions that indicate that there's going to be a change, that they're about to switch or they're about to write more. And then you can use this to direct some specific action by the field to take advantage of specific conditions. So again, lots of power here, lots of opportunity to allow your teams to work smarter and also more efficiently.
And of course, for AI to work and for the whole system to work the right way, you want something which is scalable. And increasingly, as business goes global, yet local, regional, country nuances introduce new challenges, a key trait is to have a solution that is globally scalable, not just technically, but geographically and commercially as well. For example, will the system meet localization laws in China? Will it support GDPR in Europe? What about local healthcare nuances in US? Will it support both simple rules and complex graph-based optimization? The list goes on and on. And we need to leverage the best of cloud, big data, graphical approaches, distributed architecture to easily scale across business units and global markets to meet the needs of our client, which are largely going global. So we need a system that's not created for today and only for one geography, but can scale beyond boundaries as your needs grow and as your business continues to grow. So these were some of the key traits we wanted to share with you, and we hope you agree with them. And we do have some time, of course, to take some questions. So let me call upon Tom and Emma to take us forward from here.
Perfect. We do have a couple questions. We'll go ahead and start with this one. Where do you see the role of physical reps going in the future, and how do you see those new roles driving the commercial transformation?
Thanks, Emma. I'll take this one. Emma, you cut in and out, but I think what you said is, where do you see the role of the physical rep going, right?
Correct. I can retake that one. Where do you see the role of the physical reps going in the future, and how do you see these new roles driving the commercial transformation?
Great question. So I'll take this one. I think we believe that the physical rep will continue to play a crucial importance for organizations and in the go-to-market strategy. Of course, no one can predict, how the pandemic will evolve, but we assume that eventually it will go away or to some degree, and there will be more and more face-to-face. That said, we also believe that there's going to be an evolution towards a more holistic approach, where in the past, the physical rep, I think, had a very special importance in organizations' arsenal. And organizations spent a disproportionate amount of time and resources to make sure that this was, that they would utilize it in the most efficient possible way. I think in the future, we see a more holistic system that utilizes other channels and other tactics more rationally to go to market in a more aggregate way, if you will. But great question. I think there's going to be some evolution. We don't see face-to-face disappear. And by the way, in a lot of the discussions that we had with leaders across the industry, there was agreement that many feel that this is still going to be they're still going to have a very important role within a go-to-market.
Excellent. So we have another question from Fran. She asks, if you had to pick one element from your checklist as the most important, which one would it be and why?
Very good one. If I had to, I'll ask Abhi also to pick his. I'll say future-proof. I think the world is changing so rapidly. I think that I was reading very recently a book called Post-Corona by Scott Galloway that said sometimes nothing happens in decades, and then decades happens in weeks. And it seems like this COVID crisis has really brought about this acceleration, that there's so much change that happens, and that it is really important to select a platform that is flexible and that is going to be able to accompany you to meet your future challenges. So I think that one is particularly important. But Abhi, maybe I'll throw it to you to see if you have any other preference.
I think my favorite would be globally scalable. And the reason being that more often than not, we know what to do. And we have the answers that, in this scenario, perhaps this is what needs to be done. But that is where the system and the scalability often becomes a limiting factor. So something which is flexible and scalable at a global scale, perhaps would be my pick.
Perfect. We have time for one more. What is your working definition of the sales performance management platform? And tangibly, what does it encompass in terms of capabilities?
Great question. This is also, I think, a notion that is evolving, but I think traditionally, the sales performance management goes from, let's call it resource planning to go-to-market design and deployment, to alignment, to categories like roster management, to call planning and targeting, to incentive compensation with all the activities that are implied, and to commercial execution support. Right? And I think that's an important point. We believe that there is this notion called dynamic planning, where it is really important to provide the capabilities to the field also to make these last mile audibles, these last mile edits to their strategy and to their plan to really go about and tackle the market most effectively. So I think this is a traditional definition with, I think the commercial execution support is one where we see sales performance management evolving, and we see sales performance management providing a ton of value to support organizations like this. Abhi, anything else? Oops, sorry.
I think the only thing is just from an API extensions. Sorry, go on, Emma.
Oh no, go ahead.
Now, I was just adding that, if you include that from a traditional definition, absolutely, as Tom sort of pointed it out, but as the overall commercial ecosystem evolves, and as we were touching upon earlier as well, that in terms of the different APIs and the hyperconnection, both up and down the value chain, that is where we run into a little bit of that fuzzy area, that where do we stop from a sales performance management system, and where does the other part start, all the way from the execution into marketing and orchestration into CRM and so forth. But the idea is that the platform overall should be hyper-connected, although the SPM definition might start and stop, just like Tom's alluded to.
Perfect. And I think that's all the time we have today. So thank you, Tom and Abhi, and thank you so much to our audience for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. Tom, Abhi, I'll let you end with some closing thoughts before I wrap us up.
Thanks, Emma, and thank you, everyone. I think we realize that we touched on a lot of very important concepts, and we went very fast. And there's much more to that. And so we wanted to put our contact information here to invite you to connect with us directly. You probably have many more questions, and we'll be happy to connect back with you and answer any question you may have. Abhi and I have been working on this for quite some time with a large and mature team. So I think there's quite a bit more, and we'd be thrilled to share it with you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. Amazing presentation. As I mentioned, take a few moments to fill out that feedback survey, and this presentation will also be available shortly on demand, so you can review it again. And we hope you'll join us for our next webinar. It's called The Balance of Live, Virtual, or Hybrid Meetings for Effectiveness and Cost Savings, which goes live March 10th. We hope to see you there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom and Abhi. Amazing job.